Now 6:30. We will begin the Moses Lake City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, October 10th. I thank you everyone for being here. Citizens who request to address the council will be called on at the appropriate time to make comments. And if there are any students in attendance and we're not done by 9 o'clock, we'll take a short break and sign your form so you can go home. Will the deputy clerk please call the roll?
Thank you, Mayor Myers. Councilmember Fancher,
Present.
Councilmember Swartz,
Present.
Councilmember Madewell,
Present.
Councilmember Scog,
Present.
Deputy Mayor Martinez,
Present.
and Mayor Myers.
Present. Councilmember Eck is absent today, and I would entertain a motion to excuse his absence.
So moved.
Thank you. Need a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. In the audience today, we have Girl Scout Troop 1232 that will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, ladies. Here in just a moment, I'll have you guys explain why you're here. So just a couple items before we get to you. Thank you. Does any council member wish to move a consent agenda item to a business item for individual discussion and vote, or make other modifications for tonight's agenda? Hearing none, I'd accept a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Citizens' comments, we do have a couple. You will be limited to 5 minutes. Please address the council, not the staff. We expect respect for those that have positions with one may disagree, so debate or interactive discussions are strictly prohibited. Council may request staff research comments received for potential future action, and please take private conversations outside. When you're called to speak, please begin with stating your name and city of residence for the record. We'll start with Victor Lombardi.
Good evening. Victor Lombardi, Moses Lake. The Citizen Advisory Group that I'm a part of has been reviewing some of the checks written in the last 2 weeks, and it raised a couple of points. Over the course of the year, we have seen a number of large checks to Summit Law Group. Now, Summit Law Group, for those that are not familiar, focuses on defending municipalities from employee lawsuits, negotiating union contracts, training employees on termination policies. So they do a number of things. At this point, there has been little detail on the services that they have provided, Summit Law. The citizens would like the interim city manager at the next meeting to detail out for the citizens how much money has been paid to Summit Law year to date, and to break out the category of services. Should there be any ongoing lawsuits in which Summit Law is representing the city of Moses Lake, we would like that to be itemized and just the current status and so forth. As a former Wall Street analyst, it was required by the Securities Exchange Commission for a publicly traded company to disclose all ongoing lawsuits and the amount of money in reserves for settlements. As a result, we don't feel that this is a burden. So if this could be added graciously to the next meeting's agenda, this would be greatly appreciated by the citizens. The second item is the police station construct. After the last meeting's disclosure that the city owed $182,000 to McKinstry for consulting fees, there seemed to be some surprise by both the amount and the disclosure. Now, one of the checks in the last 2 weeks was to Roluta Architects, is the architect for the police station. And some might recall the initial bid that they gave was 400,000, and then it was revised to over 1 million. So these two scenarios produced a concern by the citizens. And again, we're not stating that there's a major issue here. We're just asking it to be fulfilled. So as a result, the citizens would like to suggest the following: have city staff provide a live ongoing project update page where city council members can log on at any time to see the status of all the current projects. Using common project management software that produces Gantt charts, for instance, GANTT, which are construction and project schedules that display the timeline and the status, as well as who's responsible for each task in the project, when each task will begin and end, how long each task will take, and so forth. Combine this with a project cost accounting model, which displays all the expenses that are on the budget, below budget, or over budget, and the percentage of the completion of the project itself, will give a robust project status for the council members to look at and get a better understanding of what is taking place. This will eliminate the cumbersome need for council members to contact the city manager to get permission first to talk to employees, which often results in endless ineffective email exchanges, phone calls, and frustration. If the city council is to be the safeguard and the last guardian and the financial fiduciary, these simple applications will be of great assistance for their responsibility. But it'll also provide a better flow of communication for city employees and understanding of current projects. Thank you, and God bless Moses Lake.
Deputy Mayor Martinez.
Mr. Lombardi, if you don't mind, I have a couple of questions. The citizen group, what's the name of it?
Oh, there's no name. It's just a group of citizens that just review the check. So every 2 weeks, as you know, it's publicly disclosed on the check. So we
Yeah.
go through them and just look at it.
Okay, it sounded like it was
No.
a official group that
No,
you guys
not at all.
met, because I was curious when you met.
Yeah.
So, and then in the article that was in the newspaper, you made some comments about fraud, claiming fraud. And so is this part of these
No,
questions?
Not at all. No,
Okay,
like I said, just earlier, we just go and review and look at different things. And if there's a question, then we just ask the question.
okay. And then, thought I had a third question, maybe not. Oh, just for me anyway,
Sure.
I have no problem talking to any of the city staff. City manager, I don't have to necessarily ask permission. I
And that's
can-
great if you have
yeah.
that relationship already, but the RCW requires permission. So that's all I'm saying.
Yep.
Do you feel that that would be a benefit to you, though, to have a page that you can log on to look at each project and see the status and how it's going and so forth?
Potentially. I just wanted to clarify that our city manager doesn't roadblock us. And
Right,
that's kind of how it sounds.
But
what you're
we'll
saying.
be having a new one, so it depends on what
All right.
that person feels.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So I do have a question. I think it's a reasonable request for the funding amount for the Summit Law Group. Is that something that we can?
I've written it down. The only thing I would, I'll call, these are strong. I'll call WCIA and make sure that any pending litigation that there might be, whether it's releasable or not, but I'll find the numbers. That's easy enough.
And then for Kirsten, our community development director, we have something either currently or in the works of the project lists, and how far along is it? Is that true?
Well, we currently have a software program for development projects called CityWorks, but we are looking to exit that system, and we have hired another company to write assess our gaps and determine what we want in an RFP for a new and improved software program. We're expecting the report by the end of the month.
Because I know that's something that I get asked frequently is what's going here, what's going there, how long those kind of things. So having that information easily
In the
available.
meantime, I believe our GIS division has put together, and I think has actually maybe even recently completed a projects page that would be like a GIS one, where you could look at the locations of different projects. And so we'll be launching that soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councilmember Schwartz.
Yes, thank you for bringing up those points, Mr. Lombardi. Actually, in one of our regular commiserative conversations that Mark and I have, I brought up the idea that, it appears to me with the amount of growth that we're experiencing here in Moses Lake that, there are going to be capital projects that go along with that growth. And it would probably be appropriate to look into forming a committee that just oversaw those capital projects and the development of that plan over time. I know we have a committee that's, community development, public works, that sort of thing, but we don't really get a cohesive, long-term planning opportunity very often. And again, with all the growth, that might be appropriate to look into.
You talking about like a long-range planning committee kind of thing?
Of sorts, yes.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it would incorporate right now, for instance, the police station, that's a current project. So just as Mr. Lombardi was saying, just to have some oversight to make sure that it's easier to have a conversation with the public when we're informed. So.
Okay. And I know that we've engaged services of a project manager. I think the term was owner's rep for the Larson Rec Center. Also, the same person will be overseeing the police station build once we get into the actual construction phase. So that might be somebody also we bring into this.
Councilmember Scogden.
I know I'd like to see something specifically relating to the police department building with Reluda and their fees, which I did think kind of got a bit distorted. And I know there's bills that come in and here's a check to them. I know I'd like to see what phase, what percentage of their work has been done. I would assume somebody's, authorizing 40%, 50%.
Richard and I are meeting with them on a regular basis. Matter of fact, they just met with us last week to present their 60% plan documents.
Have we seen those documents?
Oh, yeah. We received them last week, 2 weeks ago. And I'm meeting with them again on Friday this week to work through some other things. So we're in constant communication with them and getting updates on where they're at on the project.
Is that something we could have a
Oh,
report?
yeah,
on?
we I don't know why I couldn't forward you the 60% plan document so you can start taking a look at them.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Fanger.
Yeah, I think it's just the biggest thing, all about communication. Again, we've got good committees, I think this is just with the growth of the city. I think even the project board, I think the city has so many projects that having the project board for our projects, I think is more about the communication piece that we talked about we're doing a big undertaking and communicating with us so that we can help bridge that gap with the public as opposed to not sure what's going on. So I think that's what we're asking for.
Okay, our next citizen comment is Linda Curran. And please state your name and city of residence for the record.
Yeah, my name is Linda Curran. I live Knowles Vista area, Grape Drive, Village Park. We have a situation that you're probably not aware, and I wanted to make you aware of it. There's a dangerous area for drivers. When you come from Marina Drive onto, like you're going to come into Broadway, right by the Chevron station there. On the left is a grassy area where all the signs are. A few weeks ago, I complained because the sign that was for the gun show was blocking the view. Now, one of the signs is blocking the view, even though the small ones are beside. What is needed is there's a telephone pole and it's in front of that. If it was all brought back and you'd still be able to see it driving the signs, could be back this side of the telephone pole because it curves and then it starts going straight by Michael's on the lake. And that's when you lose the view. And there's many a time that I've had to sneak out and get real close to even see to the point of almost getting into the driving area. If we could have the signs so that they were put back further, it would be so much safer. And I just hold my breath every time I come in there. And I take a friend of mine to church twice a week. So I'm doing that twice a week. So I'd really appreciate if you maybe could look into that and see if we could get it corrected. Thank you. Got any other questions? Thank you.
Can staff take a look into that? Okay, appreciate it. Thank you for the comment. Alicia DeLuigi.
Alicia DeLuigi, Lisa from Moses Lake, if it pleases the council. Good evening. First, I would like to ask for you guys, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself on the consent agenda, but I would like to see the fire impact fee ordinance and resolution passed for reasons I've already provided. And also to consider also passing the proposed BMX track improvements for reasons that I already provided via email as well. Please join with me in honoring our firefighters. And this week is the 2023 Fire Prevention Week. So kudos to our firefighters, and it's a blessing that they're actually here tonight. Also to let you know, with regards to the police, I extended on behalf of the Department of Homeland Security a continued presence webinar for local law enforcement. Sometimes I get free training opportunities that I extend not only to the local police here, but also to the GCSO because it saves money and it's free training. Today, I also put in a request to legislation in the governor's office for an RCW amendment in regard to CARP changes for the watershed so that that can help out with the toxic green algae greatly. My meeting with Representative Jayapal, there was nothing pertinent to the local matters at this time to discuss. I do have some serious concerns with regards to Hope Source. I'm grateful that they came in. I'm grateful that they provided information, but the waters are kind of muddy in the funding sources. They have multiple funding sources, and they have one specifically for the sleep center that wasn't really addressed. Where's this additional $100,000 that are needed? And what is it specifically is it being used for? I'm grateful for the opportunity that just in the last week alone, all of a sudden, 7 people have gotten housed. And so in perspective of that, I asked the city council to please maybe request monthly progress reports for them for like the next 6 months, because if there's eyes on them and they're showing progress in their care, I would like to see that continue. I was wondering who's responsible for fixing the broken things down at the sleep center and paying for them. Because there's a lot of from what I've been told, and I talked to the Hope Source, I have nothing bad to say about most of their employees. I actually have great relations with most of the employees there, but I also talk to the homeless. So I get to see both perspectives, and I have my own personal firsthand experiences. But a lot of there's cots that are broken. There's shelters that don't even have cots in them for them to sleep. There's doors that aren't even able to be closed. None of this is being fixed. There's bathrooms that were broken that I think they finally got fixed, but I mean, and the whole thing about the garbage, if you guys knew the amount of the homeless people's property they're throwing away, including their sleeping bags. One gentleman was in tears begging me to help him because 3 times already they've thrown away his sleeping bag, and that's his necessity. And what do we do? What do I do? There's no grievance process, you guys. And these people, I'd like to see a list of all the violations that the homeless people are enduring from going to that sleep center, because it's absolutely astounding and ridiculous. And there's just a couple of the employees that are literally bullying and abusing these homeless people. And they're not providing them the handbook, so they don't know if they're what they're violating or what they don't. They're not making sure that the people that have mental health illnesses that are pretty obvious are not getting, like, really understanding the books, the ones that are. They're supposed to be getting written warnings, like if they're late or if their totes aren't being closed properly and stuff like that. They're not getting written warnings. What they're getting told is you violated, come back later tonight. They're coming back later that evening. And then they're being told, oh yeah, here's 4 violations. You can't come in tonight. By the way, you can't even get your own stuff. So sleep with sleep with what you have outside. This is really happening, you guys. And this is a concern that I have, because this shouldn't be happening. I'm grateful for Chanel at Hope Source, who said, hey, Lisa, if you hear these kinds of things, come and address them with me. But if they're out there doing outsourcing 3 times a week, then they should be knowing about these kinds of concerns. They should be knowing about these kinds of problems, because I only go out once a week, maybe 2 times a week, and people are addressing that with me. And you guys, obviously I feel passionate about it. These are human beings. I am very concerned about the funding, because there was no clear answers tonight. A lot of the resources, they go from 15 million to 40 million in grants, but yet they need more money from us too. Something's just not making sense, and it's not making sense because something's not right. And I get it.
Alicia?
Brittany's there to represent her people.
Final comments, please. Thank you.
The reason why I'm bringing these things up to you is because they are ultimately hands down your liability. And if they're not doing the things they're supposed to be doing, today the Supreme Court just heard a case with regards to a lot of these issues that was brought forth by the ACLU and the Northwest Justice Project, starting with the town of Lacey. And there's homeless people coming from Boise, homeless people coming from Portland, and a few other places that have already successfully litigated. So we do need to protect our funds. We do need to protect our citizens, our taxpayers' expenditures, as well as our insurance, by making sure that they're doing their job and they're doing it right, and not just 1 week because they got put on the spot.
Okay.
Please and
Thank
thank you.
Any questions or comments from the council? Go ahead, Councilmember Scott.
Yeah, and thank you again.
Lisa, thanks for bringing that stuff to our attention. You're not the only person who's recognized some of the needs down there. And I think we can do a better job, and we must do a better job. Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of the people that aren't going to the sleep center aren't going in there because they're being violated for sneezing wrong. It's ridiculous. And if they're not getting the handbooks to know, that's unacceptable. And they're being bullied and abused. And I know that I experienced that just recently. So I know firsthand.
Deputy
So,
Mayor Martinez.
Thank you.
Just wanted to answer one of your questions, is that our city staff is responsible for repairs. So Hope Source knows that they need to let us know about it. And we spend time and money to go repair those things.
Okay, well, if either one, and I don't believe for 1 second that our city is failing in due diligence in providing that type of care and fixing things. But I'm concerned why it's not happening. So why is it not happening? Is the city not being informed? Because I can tell you right now, the bathrooms took forever to get fixed. And that's what people use to go to the bathroom. So where are they going to go to the bathroom if they don't have a toilet? There's multiple shelters that don't have cots, or the cots are broken and the doors aren't even closing. So how are they supposed to even have safety? Because like Brittany was saying earlier in her presentation, we don't let anybody under the age of 18 because we can't discriminate. So if they let somebody that is going to hurt another human being in different ways, and there's a single woman in a shelter and she can't close the door, that ends up being a liability for us because we are not providing just the basic, even being able to shut the doors.
I know city staff is pretty quick about trying to fix some of that stuff. Sometimes there are parts that have to be ordered or whatnot, and those shelters are pretty wore out. So that's on our radar.
Okay, yeah, because I'd like to be able to hear next week that there are cots that people can sleep on and they're not sleeping on the floor, and that the doors are being closed so that they're not risking being raped or beaten or
Okay.
murdered or drugged.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Moving on to the mayor's report. We have the Girl Scout Troop 1232 that's here today, celebrating the Day of the Girl, which is actually tomorrow. But this is our 11th year celebrating this, and I'll let you guys step up to the mic if you'd like to say a few words about the Day of the Girl.
October 11th is the Day of the Girl by United Nations. It was declared a decade ago by International Day of the Girl that empowers girls and amplifies their voices. Thank you for letting our girls empower our voices.
Our council community support has helped us overcome hardships in the past few years. They even help Girl Scouts grow in strength, like rock climbing, skiing, many of the other things that we do, like sewing and go camping. We have grown to over 73 Girl Scouts in our area. We were able to attend Girl Scout National Convention in Florida recently and do numerous other things around our community. Thank you, Council, for helping Girl Scouts grow and make the world a better place.
Thank you, ladies, and we appreciate all the cookies that you sell us. I mean, everybody knows those, but beyond that, it helps fund all the different activities that you guys do, and we're here to celebrate with you. So if we can get a round of applause for Day of the Girl. Next, we have the Planning Month proclamation, and I will read that now. Whereas change is constant and affects all cities, towns, suburbs, counties, boroughs, townships, rural areas, and other places. Whereas community planning and plans can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for how people work and live. And whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents to be meaningfully involved in making choices that determine the future of their community. And whereas the full benefits of planning requires public officials and citizens who understand support and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation. And whereas the month of October is designated as National Community Planning Month through the United States and its territories, and whereas the American Planning Association endorses National Community Planning Month as an opportunity to highlight how planning is essential to recovery and how planners can lead communities to equitable, resilient, and long-lasting recovery. And whereas the celebration of National Community Planning Month gives us the opportunity to publicly recognize the participation and dedication of the members of planning commissions and other citizen planners who have contributed their time and expertise to the improvement of the city of Moses Lake of Grant County, Washington. And whereas we recognize the many valuable contributions made by professional, community, and regional planners of the city of Moses Lake, Grant County, Washington, and extend our heartfelt thanks for the continued commitment to public service by these professionals. Now therefore be it resolved that the month of October 2023 is hereby designated as Community Planning Month in the city of Moses Lake of Grant County in conjunction with the celebration of National Community Planning Month. Round of applause for our planners. In the second piece, we have another proclamation that I'll actually have our deputy mayor read for Hispanic Heritage Month.
Thanks, Mayor Myers. Whereas in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month, the city of Moses Lake is pleased to celebrate the Hispanic and Latino community throughout our city. And whereas National Hispanic Heritage Month is celebrated in the United States from September 15th to October 15th, the observance was introduced in 1968, that was the year I was born, as as Hispanic Heritage Week under President Johnson and was expanded by President Reagan in 1988 to cover a 30-day period. And whereas Hispanic Heritage Month celebrates the history, traditions, and culture of the Hispanic and Latino residents in Moses Lake, we admire the invaluable ways they contribute to our city by bringing rich diversity and growth to our community. And whereas we strive to continue to commemorate this month by recognizing and dedicating ourselves to working together to address the challenges that still face our Hispanic and Latino population. And now therefore, I, Deputy Mayor Martinez, by virtue of the authority vested in me as Deputy Mayor of the City of Moses Lake of Washington, do hereby proclaim September 15th to October 15th as Hispanic Heritage Month.
That's all I have for the mayor's report. Does any council wish to have any new business brought to a future meeting?
Just an update on my request to check those septic tanks on Marina Drive. I asked for an investigation 2 weeks ago. Just want an update if you've had time.
So we've been still trying to figure out what's that. Okay, all right.
Okay, we can move on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor Myers. I have two. First, we'll do introductions of new employees, and I'm going to start with fire since half of them already left. We can go while the other half are still here, so a cheap action.
I think he just messed up Captain Sam's program here.
We had it worked out down here, but that's fine. It's fine.
All right. So as council knows, we were recipient of the SAFER grant for the next 3 years, about a $3 million grant under the Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response. And we have most of our hires here tonight, and I'm just going to have them stand up. I asked them to all write a brief bio. So we'll just start with Sean Scott. Okay. Sean started in the fire service with Grant County Fire District 5, volunteering for about 4 years before he was hired on full-time with Snohomish Regional Fire and Rescue, where he worked about a year before being hired here in Moses Lake. Sean is glad to be back in the Moses Lake area. Next, Darren Jacobs. Darren comes to us from North Spokane County. He has experience in wildland, structural, and industrial firefighting. Darren also brings with him 20 years of experience working in critical care as a respiratory therapist for Providence Health. He gives back to his community every year as much as he can by volunteering at many fundraisers, but he especially enjoys doing the Portland Firefighter Stair Climb for individuals with cystic fibrosis. Next, Christopher Gonzalez Rice. He was born and raised in Eastern Oregon and is a Washington transplant. Christopher has been working in fire and EMS around the U.S. since he was 18 years old. In his off time, he enjoys traveling with his wife, taking care of their property, fly fishing, as well as anything outdoors, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and spending time with family. Then Zachary Feist, I think he just went on a call. So, but I'll go ahead. He was born and raised in Yakima, Washington. He has 5 years total in the fire service, with 3.5 of those full-time. He's passionate about his faith, family, and fitness. And then William Ellis. Born and raised in Central Washington, loves to be outdoors, hiking, hunting, and fishing. Priorities in life are glorifying God in all actions and inspiring others to be better men and women for their families. Justin Dominguez. He is at the Fire Academy right now. Justin began his fire service career as a volunteer for Spokane Fire County or Fire District 8. And Moses Lake is his first career position. He is currently attending the Washington State Fire Academy at North Bend and will graduate on November 4th. And then Joshua. Okay. Joshua Volunteer. Joshua is a 4th generation firefighter born and raised in Everett, Washington. He holds a degree in communications and another in fire science. Josh loves Jesus, his son Jace, and being on B shift. And then finally, Nathan Amold. Nathan was born and raised in Wenatchee, Washington. He started as a resident firefighter in Quincy and then was hired full-time with Grant County Fire District 8 in Mattawa. Nathan has a beautiful wife and dog at home, and they're expecting a new member of their family in January. And I will add this, that Nathan is the son of one of our original firefighter paramedics from way back in 2001 when we started the paramedic program. And his dad's now working over on the west side as a firefighter, but we have a legacy firefighter here. So there are your safer hires.
Welcome to the team.
It's actually very unusual for firemen to go before police officers. But we'll let that one pass.
Okay, Blue Canaries.
Well, ladies and gentlemen of the council, I'd like to introduce our very first analyst for the police department, Levi Giroux. Levi was born at Samaritan Hospital and raised in Ephrata, graduating in 2001. He became an Eastern Eagle. Go Eagles. Okay, there's two of you. Congratulations. Where he graduated with a degree in criminal justice. After that, he joined the work ranks briefly in Seattle before heading off to Chile in 2008 to teach English. After figuring out the bohemian lifestyle wasn't for him, Levi moved back to Seattle and worked towards his master's in criminal justice and crime analysis, graduating from Seattle University. Go Pirates. Okay. Red Hawks. That football team sucks. Okay. Levi's first foray as an analyst took him to Fargo, North Dakota, as we all know, the vacation capital of the Upper Plains and the namesake of one of the most disturbing movies I've seen. Where he stood up their program, and after a mere 2 winters, he moved to Colorado, where he worked for Lakewood PD and Denver Police Department over the next 6 years. During that time, he met his lovely little wife, Danielle, whom I'm assured they did not start dating until they didn't work together. Post-COVID, Levi and Danielle decided they should move closer to their families in the Pacific Northwest, so they moved to Spokane, where Levi was an analyst for 2 years before seeing our job opening and deciding we were some really cool people they wanted to hang out with. They packed up and moved back to the Ephrata area, where Danielle is able to work as a software consultant from home, and they are able to enjoy the solitude of country living. Ladies and gentlemen, I present Moses Lake Police Department's first analyst, Levi Giroux.
Mayor, I have one other. We got to turn these things down. One other topic, and that is on the dais is the 2024 legislative agenda for AWC, if I can say it right. And then you'll see our last year priority list. So we will create, or you will create, a new priority list for 2024. I gave you those two so you can see what AWC has and what our current priorities are, and then we can modify those in the coming weeks to create a 2024 Moses Lake priority list that we can then share with our legislators. So that's just for your information at this point. And Mayor, that's all I have.
Thank you. Item number 1, we have the Windrose Drive right-of-way vacation ordinance. And we'll turn this over to the city manager and staff to present.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm turning it over to Richard Law.
Okay, so you'll see briefly, and we're gonna bring it up on the screen here real quick, just so you have some context. Back in 1997, there was a plat in the Knowles Vista area that was platted, and as part of that, there was a road that ended. And in order to make a safe turnaround, they platted a cul-de-sac essentially with a little stub off the end for a future road. And so now with the Polo Ridge 4 plat, that road has now been extended through. And so that little corner that was right of way is no longer needed for a turnaround because of the T intersection now. So there are no utilities in it. There is no reason to retain that property, and we are requesting to vacate property for Polo Ridge 4 plat.
Okay, we do have to open a public hearing for this matter. So at this time, I will open the public hearing. We did have one person that would requested to speak, Zach Schneider. I know you said only if we have questions, but if there's anything you'd like to say on the project. Just need to unmute yourself. Or any other members of the public, if you'd like to speak on this matter.
Nope, no questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Oh. You step up to the mic. Thank you. Just need name and city of residence.
My name's Del Green from Columbia Northwest Engineering, also representing Schneider Homes in this, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have as well.
Okay.
None. Thank you.
Any other members of the public like to speak? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Open it up for council discussion and questions. Hearing none, I'd accept a motion to adopt ordinance 3036.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next item is the consent agenda. All items listed are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. Need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Under old business, item number 3, the fire impact fee ordinance 3037 and resolution 3956. We'll turn this over to the fire chief, Brett Bastian.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in your packet, you have the rate study for fire impact fees. You have a ordinance and a resolution adopting the fees for the impact fees. We went through a study session on this in September. I would be happy to answer any questions. Essentially, what we're looking at here is an alternative to how we are dealing with SEPA mitigation on the financial piece of SEPA for fire impact or for fire response. And going to impact fees does a couple of things for us. One, it allows us to have a more I don't want to say it. It is a better way of having the developers know what the costs are up front, rather than doing the SEPA financial component and really not knowing what that financial component is going to be until we get through the entire process of reviewing that project. And it also will allow us to speed up the review process just because we can eliminate that financial component of SEPA. It's a fairly lengthy document. It details out how we came to the formulas for the fire facilities, which are specifically fire stations. We eliminated apparatus out of this. It is for fire stations, and I would be happy to answer any questions. If I can't answer them, the rest of the team that worked on the ordinance is here and can certainly jump in with me on that.
Questions or comments from the council? Councilmember Schwartz?
Yeah, we've had a lot of discussion on this, so pardon me if I'm rehashing something we've already covered, but have we established where a new fire station would go?
We know that we have 2 locations that need a fire station. North Industrial area, we need a fire station up north. We do have a meeting with a developer here in the next couple of weeks, myself and the assistant chief of prevention. And I told Kevin that about that meeting, and hopefully he can attend too. But there's a possibility of some property being donated for a station up in that area. So essentially we know based on call volume and new call volume or emerging calls and emerging development that we need one in the north area, just because we can't make response time in the north area. The south area, that's an area that has a high call volume. So we really need one in the south end of town too, out towards where Yanazawa Boulevard crosses 17. That would be a good location for a station. It also puts a station in close proximity to the new hospital. That has almost all of our skilled nursing facilities are in that south end zone. So that will reduce some of the response time in that zone if we were to build a station there. Geographically speaking, yes, we need multiple stations built, but just from the call volume, emerging call volume and travel time, the North Industrial Corridor probably is our biggest need right now, followed by the south end.
Okay. I mean, in theory, if regardless if there's one here or one there, the net effect is everybody wins because the station down here then can be dedicated more to this end of town and so on and
Correct.
so forth.
It's,
Correct.
yeah, we would have staffing spread further across the city rather than concentrated in one station.
Okay. Fire impact fees have been a discussion for a lot of years. We know that for a period of time, maybe it wasn't in our legal framework to be able to do something like this. As somebody who's involved in construction and development, I have a particular point of view on it, but I said it earlier in the meeting that we're a growing community. And so at some point, we're growing outward just as much, if not more than we're growing upward, certainly. But so there's a geographic coverage problem we're going to have. I think everybody recognizes that. Is this the best mechanism to pay for the fire station? I don't know. That's debatable. But I would say if we're going to do it, I think it's a lot easier sell, quote unquote, to have a very specific target in mind. If we're going to move in this direction, then how quickly can we say, get an engineer to sort of get us more in the ballpark of what this thing's going to look like, or an architect or whatever that's going to take?
Well, I will say that we have gone out, looked at some other fire stations. We looked at Chelan County's new station at Rock Island. That is a great station. Their cost on that was about $5 million. That was land inclusive with generators and the backup generators on that piece of on that station. That station would work very well for us. And I have talked to them about being able to grab their design documents, and I think we could move forward fairly quickly if we make that decision to move forward with another station.
Okay. And if we pass this, how quickly does it take effect?
I am going to defer that one to the city attorney.
I'm assuming 30 days. You go for it.
Because there's no public hearing required, there's no constraints, so you can make it effective whenever you want, but at a minimum, it's 5 days after publication of the summary.
Okay, so in effect immediately. Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, again, considering the amount of growth we have going on and that this would be an immediate change, I'm in favor of having some more public input on it before we make the choice, but I'm open to having a discussion about it tonight, I guess. That's where I'll conclude my comments. Thank you, Brett.
Councilmember Fancher.
So this wraps in. I mean, we know it's for the capital facilities. We know it's for the fire stations. This goes back to having a committee and getting a handle on where all these capital facilities are and being well informed, as well as keeping the public informed of where this money's going. I think that's back to some of the SEPA problems we're having right now, is where's that money going? And that's why we're having a lot of angst, to say the least. I have had the opportunity to talk to multiple developers regarding this. And of course, we've now got them in a position where they're like, well, this might be better than the alternative, which is SEPA. So I do appreciate also, thinking about what you really need. Like you say, we pulled the transportation piece out of it, the engines and that kind of stuff, because I think we do, and you've admitted we've done a pretty good job of putting good equipment out there. I too am the same way. It's making sure that the public knows what we're doing and what's going on. But I did take the opportunity over the last few days to talk to quite a few developers and both housing and industrial and commercial developers. And I think certainty is a very important piece for them. So like I say, I think those are my comments, and I'm the same thing. I cut from the mold that I wish there was a different way. I wish we had an unlimited pot of money. But I also understand the need to provide the service. The one question I would ask, I assume, because we're still trying to figure out how to grow. We had a meeting regarding the regional fire authority, and first meeting kind of talked about it. What happens in a scenario that everything changes? I mean, the fire department still has to be funded, but what we do impact fees stay?
So I can't answer that, to be quite honest with you. If they go, I think it depends on where they end
Well, I
up.
assume it depends on how it's set up.
Yeah, if they go to a regional fire authority, if they become a fire.
We don't know
fire
the answer to
district,
that.
we won't know the answer to that.
That's part of the discussion at the time of when you do it.
Yeah, and I will say I've already reached out to the consultant and we're going to talk next week about starting the process.
Deputy Mayor Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor. As I understand it, this is a much easier way for developers to know what the cost is ahead of time. The SEPA, whatever you want to call it, seemed to be quite contentious. So, and I believe that most developers are very familiar with impact fees. Ours tend to be a little bit cheaper over here than other areas, from what I've learned today. So, I'm fine with moving forward with this. I do have a question for Madeline, because I think we've done a couple of SEPA, what's the term? SEPA reviews?
SEPA mitigation fees.
Yeah, and I believe that you created a new fund for that. So what's going to happen with that money, if there's any money in that particular fund?
I believe that also it's similar to what the impact fees would be, is that it would go towards the building of a new fire station.
Okay,
That's
so
what those funds were identified and designated for.
So if we do move forward with this, then will you roll that SEPA money into that same account then?
Yes,
Okay,
it would still be designated specifically aside from the general fund, or it would be a separate fund.
right, okay. And my follow-up is just that, we've got a lot of stuff that needs to happen. I live on the south end. I'd much prefer to have somebody respond to me quicker than later. And I'm sure that somebody on the north end and the industrial section would like somebody sooner than later too. So this seems like a reasonable way to try and fill some of those needs, because we're growing at a fast rate, and it's a lot of money that's going to be required to do that. So, yep. Thank you.
I would add to that, regardless of what we do, as far as forming an RFA or a fire district, we need to be looking forward, because as council has said, we are continuing to grow, and we're growing at a rate that I haven't seen in. Am I not on? Oh, there we go. Okay. So we're growing at a very rapid rate.
So my comment would be, I don't want this to be a forever funding source. I'd like something to be triggered in the ordinance that once we build these two stations, that the council at the time will then review the ordinance to assess the needs, if it is still warranted. So I don't know how the council would feel about that. Just something that we can start the discussion again. Because I'm just worried, kind of like the parks impact fee, that there may be over and over again, maybe donated land or however it works out that we can't do something with. So some sort of sunset clause.
That one wouldn't turn on. So one thing I would add on to that, Mr. Mayor, is that there is a requirement for impact fees. If we don't encumber them within 10 years, we have to start returning those fees, and unless the council directs an encumbrance or an extension. So there is basically a sunsetting period in there. If we don't encumber them within 10 years, we have to start turning those back. That's in the ordinance.
That's still on the back end. I'd like to at least review it so we can stop on the front end. Councilmember Swartz.
Yeah, just to your question, Mark, I do believe that there are some constraints depending on what type of entity you have. And I think under one of them, you're not allowed to collect impact fees at all, correct?
Right. Under the districting piece, you can have a fire benefit charge, which is very similar to an impact fee. But it is different than an impact fee, and an impact fee is a funding source for municipalities.
Okay, is in a fire district, are those voted on by the public in that case?
The benefit charge would be, yes.
Okay. And then just, this isn't a gotcha or anything, but just for the sake of conversation, if we build a new station, just so that everybody's clear, these funds cannot be used for anything other than for the facility itself.
Right. That direction that I received was to do the rate study specifically for a capital facility, meaning a fire station. And that's why I did the rate study as.
And I think that
just
was
a fire
smart.
station.
Yeah. But my question is, how many people? So when we build the new fire station, so we just welcomed 9 new firefighters tonight, correct? So how many in addition to the 9 that we had tonight? Let's say we have a fire station in 5 years from today, when that thing opens, how many more employees are we going to have to hire?
Well, in 5 years, I don't know what our call volume will be. I have an estimate of where it will be. But if we were to open that station today, I don't need to hire any additional people. We have enough people. That's why administration moved out of Station 1. We vacated all of our office spaces so that we could put people in bunk rooms in Station 1. We have enough people to staff 3 stations. It's just, we need to move them around instead of all being in the big house over here on 3rd Avenue.
Okay.
Councilmember Fancher.
Back to the SEPA mitigation fees. But if I recall, I assume it'll be separate. Some of those mitigation requirements weren't necessarily for capital facilities. So I assume some of those funds will be earmarked out accordingly by the mitigation, because it wasn't all for a fire station. I mean, they were very specific to the type of mitigation that was being done. So I don't think we can just slide them all into our new fire station.
In every one of the mitigations, facilities was a component of that. So there were specific references to facilities in those mitigation funds. But there is also, and that's the whole problem with going with SEPA mitigation, is you have to look at every individual project and try to figure out what the hazards are. And so we did look at, potential mitigation for additional hazardous materials equipment, some types of equipment like foam equipment, and trucks. So there was some of that mentioned in there, but every one of those mitigations that have been conducted so far have had a facilities piece in them.
And I wasn't disagreeing with that part of it. I'm just saying that we need to be very detailed and careful of what responsibilities we have for those funds that we mitigated. So.
Right. And that's why we haven't used any of them yet. So.
Right.
Councilmember Scogg.
Thank you. I realize, I'm sure these are not just capricious numbers that you picked out of the sky. Okay, so having said that, how would, does it, if you just took what has been done last year with SEPA, if you applied this to those situations, would there be more or less impact fees or monies from the builders?
It's not really an apples to apples comparison.
Okay.
Because of how the SEPA law is written, we have to look at the individual impact of a particular facility. So we're trying to make impact fees a one size fits all sort of fee so that developers have an idea of what is going to be charged up front. Looking at some facilities, that number may be a little bit less with the impact fees than it would be under mitigation fees under SEPA. And some, it might be slightly more. But for the most part, the formulas that I used in the impact fee are addressed across a call volume piece. And we look at the age of the station. So we give that station life of 50 years. And there's a bunch of formulas in the impact fee that make it a more stable way of charging the fee rather than SEPA. So I can't really say that SEPA is going to be less or more than the fire impact fee. I believe that the impact fees will actually be less than what we would be looking at in some of the SEPA fees.
Would this speed up a approval process in a building permit?
It absolutely will speed up approval because right now, just the financial component of a SEPA review takes over a week of staff time to get through
And at
on a
this point, it
single
would just-
project.
At this point, you'd just be applying a square foot rate and
Correct.
away we go.
That one's it's some pretty simple math on a calculator. You tell me how many square feet or how many residential units you're going to build. We pop that in the calculator and tell you how much that impact fee is.
I like that.
Any other discussion or questions from council? Staff is looking for direction if you'd like to adopt ordinance 3037. Accept a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion on this matter? Councilmember Fancher?
I just have a comment. So what I don't want to have happen is us to continue to look at the future options. We pass a fire impact fee here and think we've solved all the problems. I don't think we've solved all the problems. So I don't want us to lie on the laurels that we may have a fix because I don't think we have one.
I would add to that, and that is that we need to look at every possible revenue source and not just for fire, but for everything, whether it's roads, whether it's infrastructure, whether
whether revenue or ideas.
Yeah, we got to look for options because when we talk budget next week, you will hear we've got some deficiencies that we got to figure out how we're going to fix.
We do have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 3037. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We got. Let's do a roll call vote. It's gonna be.
Thank you, Mayor Myers. Councilmember Martinez.
Aye.
Sorry, Deputy Mayor, sorry. Councilmember Swartz,
Nay.
Councilmember Fancher,
Nay.
Councilmember Madewell,
Yes.
Councilmember Skog,
Yes.
Mayor Myers.
Nay.
It's a tie.
We can go back to discussion. Any ideas or comments that might move this forward, or how would you like to proceed? Deputy Mayor Martinez?
Well, it's clear that development doesn't like the SEPA mitigation and it's extending their timeline because it's not immediate. So I'm not sure that there is an alternative currently. So we could keep moving this down the road and we're going to have developers that aren't happy. And I think one of our priorities as council was to help speed that process up for them. So that's one reason that I lean towards this. It's quicker, it's clean cut, nobody has to wonder what the final bill is going to be, and it's equitable.
Councilmember Schwartz?
Yeah, just for the sake of context, I will remind everyone that there is another option. The city, prior to very recently, operated with 0 SEPA mitigation and 0 impact fees. So that's really the basis of the that's the start of the conversation, is 0. So, you know, and this is the problem you get into where you start doing SEPA mitigation and, you know, it's 100,000, 300,000 a whack or whatever. It's a lot easier to sell impact fees once you've foisted those types of things on the public, but it's sort of extortionary if you want to look at it that way. You know, you give them the worst option and then say, well, would you like the easier one? When we knew that prior to this, we didn't need either of them. So what changed in fire service between when we didn't need any and people were still building projects here and today?
Councilmember Fancher?
I don't have much to add. That was part of my piece, was what Councilman Swartz said, but it was partially when I first questioned this to the staff earlier was I was heavily involved in the contentiousness of it the last time through, including on a committee that we hounded this out pretty hard, basically over need. I mean, over what was the plan? We do have a plan now, at least somewhat of a plan. But that was pretty contentious in some pretty big public meetings, and a committee developed it out of it. And it was my understanding that at the last meeting, we did tell you to bring it back after we had that meeting. We also I talked about making sure we knew where we stood on the budget. We have another budget meeting coming, and we don't know yet. I understand what Kevin is saying, that we've got some other holes to fill. But while I had the opportunity to talk to a few developers, I don't know that I'm saying no, because I don't think I have all the 100% buy-in exactly what we're doing with it. I was in that meeting back then, and in a matter of a few weeks, where we were going to build something changed. Now, at least you've got 2. Then you didn't know if you just knew you needed 1, but not where. So now you know you need 2. I still think the real answer is still not in front of us. The real answer is moving forward with how are we going to continue to serve the lake that's not round. And I think it's not with fire impact fees. I think it's going to be something different personally. But I'm just going on record to say that like I say, it's more about, I feel like kind of that I got the bait and switch a little bit, that we were no on fire impact fees. So we figured out how to do the SEPA, and then you're exactly right, Deputy Mayor, that it is painful for the other way, 100% painful. But I feel like now all of a sudden it's so painful that this is easy. And impact fees started at a certain level, and same thing over time. I mean, the park ones were $400, and they're now a percentage of the value of the lot. Those things can change, and that's concerning too. So that's my piece. But on the same token, I probably have developers, if they're sitting on the phone going, what's he doing? Is he really protecting our interests? Because I got a project I want to do. When you say it's the development community just doesn't want any fees.
Well, yeah, but that's.
Well, no, but I'm just saying that it's more about this little bit of the process, not that we haven't talked about it, but not having a true public hearing. I know we don't need it, but we did last time because it was going to be contentious. So
My comment, I said before, I'd like to see something just, this is not a permanent fee or a temporary need. So I just like to see something in there that would bring it back so the discussion can be had again. So something triggers it to come back. And the other piece is that we've talked about the regional fire or districting and not knowing where this money will go is just a big unknown. So if we implement the fees and then they have to stay and we don't use them before the district or, switch over, then we give them back to the builder that, that's a no interest loan. In reality, the builder would end up losing money because of the way depreciation works and inflation and all that. Deputy Mayor Martinez.
Well, there's only one place they can go, which is to build a fire station. And Chief Ashton has been pretty open about where he thinks that the stations need to be placed during our public safety committee meetings. And so that's been months now. So I guess my bad for not sharing that information when we have our committee meetings, but to hear the locations is nothing new. So Mayor Myers, are you suggesting then that if I were to adjust my motion to include a sunset clause, that we could revote?
I think we need to wait until we hear a little bit of information about what happens with the fees if there's a transition. I know we're in that discussion.
How long of a process is that though, for the consultant to do their work and then for that work to then be presented to us and then for us to, research it and figure it out, maybe hold a couple meetings before we make a decision?
No, my thought was just a simple question. It could come back next meeting, just a question. If we were a district or if it went to a regional fire authority, can those funds be transferred? Or would we have to give them back to
I can ask that question. I think it's going to depend on where we land as far as what happens, if anything happens with the fire department. And that's the question. And to answer the deputy mayor's question, in Tukwila, it took them a year. They had, I think, 10 committee meetings over a year's period of time. After that, then it took about 6 months to get the vote ready and then do the vote. So it's about an 18-month process.
One thing that I could add to that, Mr. Mayor, is one of the biggest things that we have to do, whether we do our own district, whether we look at pursuing a regional fire authority, and keep in mind, you have to have a dance partner for a regional fire authority, and I don't know if we have one or not. If you look at what just happened in Yakima County, city of Yakima approached 3 districts down there, and none of the districts wanted to play as far as the RFA goes. We haven't built a fire station in 30 years. Station 1 went from protecting 6 square miles to protecting 14 square miles. That's one of the reasons that I've been an advocate of trying to get another station and figuring out how to fund that, because we haven't been able to fund that station through other means. We haven't been able to fund it through the general fund in that period of time. But the financial component has to be developed as part of anything that we do, whether we form a district, whether we form an RFA, or if we stay here, there is a financial component that needs to be done, and that needs to have a team look at that financing piece for whatever we do. And that's probably the longest piece of time. And I would think during that, the developing the financial plan, we would see where those impact fees would go, whether they can move with a district or with an RFA. Just add that in there.
Councilmember Scog.
If we do nothing, we stay with the SEPA arrangement? Do people like that? No.
If I can go on record, I would prefer not to do sepia.
Okay.
It is,
Well, I mean,
it is a cumbersome.
Can we, by
piece.
doing the flat fee, or is that worse than SEPA?
I think the point is that we went from doing nothing to suddenly SEPA and now impact fees.
But are we ever going to go to nothing? again?
No, we're not going to go to nothing because we have fire stations that need to be built.
Okay.
And while I understand that, you know, they've got to be built, we don't have extra money in the budget. So I get Dustin and Mark's point. I really do, because yes, I agree. You know, it wasn't and now it is, but what has changed is that we're growing. And we've needed these fire stations for years now. So that isn't going to change. What's going to change, or what needs to change, is how do we find a way to fund it? And clearly we don't have it in our general fund or in our budget right now. And I don't know that we can wait years again for another station by trying to do it out of our budget. This makes sense to me, although it's unfortunate, it makes sense.
Councilmember Schwartz.
Yeah, I guess I would go back to the question, what changed though? Well, no, I mean, we've been growing ever since I've been alive. So, you know, well, I don't think that's the answer. I really don't. And so I think that's the question. I mean, I need to have more information on this, as, you know, how do other cities fund their fire department? Are we paying more for our fire service than other cities are? To begin with, if there are efficiencies to be found where we can avoid having to foist more fees on people, then I'm all for that. You know, but just to conclude with, well, we need to collect more fees because all of a sudden things are different without even identifying specifically what is different. I don't think that's very fair to the people who are going to end up paying those fees. I just don't. And again, I think it needs to come back to an exact project. You say this fire station at this address and it will be built by this date. That's what you're paying for if you have to pay these impact fees, rather than just, well, we'll build something when we get around to it. It may be here, it may be here. We don't know. You know, if I'm going to have to pay those fees, that's not a very good deal for me. Do I even know if that project's going to protect my project, or when it will? You know, some of these things need to be answered before we do this.
In response to your question, I don't think it's fair for my house to burn down because we've got so much development and growth that we don't have enough fire stations.
Right, but can impact fees pay for existing deficiencies or not?
No, they can't pay for existing
Right, so
deficiencies.
none of those monies would go to your house burning down or not anyway, Deanna. It's all for new development.
But the response time would be quicker if we have a new fire station at these two locations.
By law, that's not part of the arithmetic here. It's not for deficiencies.
Right, it isn't for deficiencies. However, if you build another fire station and we have the staffing already, I mean, that was always one of the comments from council to me over the past 10 years has been, we didn't have the apparatus. How are you going to put apparatus in the station? How are you going to put staff in the station? We have the apparatus piece done. We have the staffing piece done. We just don't have the station. If you tell me tomorrow, go look for a piece of property up in the north end, we'll go look for a piece of property up in the north end. We know where that call volume is. We know where the emerging call volume is going because we know where housing is, where it's going. And we know we have deficiencies on the south end as well. So if I were to receive direction from council or through the city manager to start looking for property, we can have that piece looked at and done. It isn't that it's a do we really need it? Yes, you really need another station because you have response times that exceed your council adopted performance standards right now. And the only way to fix that performance standard deficiency is to add additional facilities. And I'm at a loss as far as to how to fund a station in the general fund, because I'm looking at what the deficiencies are across the city, and I know what the deficiencies are. I've been here for 30 years and I've watched where we've kicked the can down the road on our water main infrastructure. And you've got water mains, miles of water mains that are failing because we've done the same thing. So that's my piece.
Deputy Mayor Martinez. Okay. Councilmember Scott.
I hear where you're coming from there, Dustin. The only, if you really wanted to take your logic to the end degree, I guess we'd get rid of SEPA right now tonight too and do nothing. But, and my thought is that these fees make more sense than SEPA and perhaps even are make
100%.
a less.
Yeah.
But other than that, to go back to what changed, we'd have to go back to zero. So, I mean, for me, it's either go to zero, get rid of SEPA, get rid of all fees, or do these flat rate ones, which seem to make more sense, but that's what I look at it. So maybe we could talk next week or next, Ken, and just take a breather and get together and have some conversations, but I don't really think there's a big alternative.
So if we can't transition the fees to a district or a regional fire authority, if we go that route, the money just goes back to the developer. How quick does that happen?
That's my understanding, and I think that would just be a matter of the city would have to figure out how much they obtained from each of the developers and just write them a check. I think that can happen relatively quick, although I would say that if we continue with the growth that we're currently experiencing and what we anticipate will happen over the next few years, I imagine you'll have enough fire impact fees to build the station within probably 3 or 4 years. So, I mean, even if you put say a 5-year sunset on it, just to reevaluate it, I think in that time, again, depending on our growth, but if it continues as is, I think you'd have enough to build a facility.
Councilmember Fancher.
So just a comment, this might even be positive. Yeah. So the citizens voted in 2 taxes, one for transportation and one for law enforcement. Both of those had 10-year fuses, correct? Then they have to go back for both of them or just one of them?
I think the public safety tax is
Forever?
continual.
Okay.
Yeah.
The transportation one I know is 10.
Yeah. The
And
TBD
it
goes
has,
back.
yeah, and it has to go back out. And I think, and then one other question, just so I have it right, and I don't know if it's Catherine or Kevin or who can answer it. Impact fees are only allowed on fire, schools. Help me out.
Parks,
Transportation. And there's 5, which is the one I'm missing.
No, police doesn't have we don't have impact fees because we don't rate like firefighters.
I know there's
So-
5, but so I guess my positive point is it's minimal that we can do for impact fees. And so my concern, 2 things. One, I'd like to make sure we take a concerted effort of somehow memorializing that we're not done looking at the problem. And then also I'm good with having a mandatory look at 5-year or whatever it's going to take to make darn sure that we're keeping an eye on things. Because what I watched with the park deal was it got sold as very nominal. And it wasn't enough. And then it got to a 5% value of the lot, which was far from, and understand it wasn't 5% back then, even at $400, but it's jumped substantially now. Because I think they figured out pretty quick the $400 wasn't getting be able to, because they had to build parks within the service area. And the 400, I don't think was going to get the park built. So they knew they needed to go up.
So,
I just wanted to remind council that to address some of the concerns about revisiting and monitoring, there are some provisions in the draft ordinance that require regular reports to the council from staff about the monies collected, the monies expended, what system improvements have been constructed. And then there's also provision in there that requires a new rate study to be updated every 3 years. So, there will be some ongoing updates and communications from staff to the council. And just like any other ordinance, if it's not working, council can make amendments, council can repeal it at council's discretion.
So I guess my question to the council is, are you good with that language, or would you like something specifically added that says that the council will review the ordinance within 5 years or at a 5-year clip? Or if is a 3-year reevaluation good enough language for the council?
Will it actually happen? Do we have that kind of language in the parks? 'Cause we don't get much input on money collected about parks fees.
I don't know if that same language is in the parks document or not, to be honest with you, if it's been
I just
around
want
for.
something like, even a developer could.
I'm pretty darn sure all of us are going to make sure that in 3 years' time. I'm pretty darn sure that everybody, with the attention that this has garnered, that all of us here will be sure that when the 3-year mark hits, that we'll be asking for information if it's aren't already given to us.
I just want something in there that if a developer sees sunset clause, when they're instituted an impact fee, they can be like, hey, this was sunsetted. Then it gets brought back to us. It's kind of forced, because I've seen sunset clauses kind of forgot about, things get missed, but just something in there that brings it back to our attention. If somebody forgets.
That's your decision as a board to make. And here's the thing, you will, I'm guessing that staff will bring this to you every year at budget season to let you know what the fund holds, how much we've got. And if we're getting close to building a facility, you'll hear it during the budget session. So every year during budget, you should hear about impact fees.
So would it be too hard to ask, Brett, which station do you want to do first?
It is literally a coin toss, but with how development is going and where I see development going, the North Station needs to be the one that's built first.
I'd like to put that in there, that we're going to build the North Station first.
So that can be in the capital facilities plan, which this is based off of. I mean, that's why council couldn't adopt this ordinance previously. So this should already be in your capital facilities plan as a
I
plan.
don't think
developed.
it's not as concrete as that. It's not as specific, and I really like to have a specific project. It's just a story I mean, part of it's, you're telling where the money's going. Is it possible to be that
With what
specific?
specificity?
I don't know why it wouldn't. Sorry.
I'm
I don't know.
asking Catherine,
Oh,
can we be that specific?
I think you can be that specific. My recommendation would be to put that in your capital facilities plan as the next fire station to be built,
Okay.
rather than in the impact fee
So
ordinance.
What do we need to do that?
Kirsten, when can we update the capital facilities plan outside of the?
I'm going to look right now and see if it's in there.
Okay.
I believe that was the intention of the previous city manager, was to get it into the comp plan.
Right.
So this conversation about impact fees could occur. So it was my understanding it was in there, but let me check.
Recommendation.
Councilmember Schwartz, did you have a? No.
Can I make a motion that we just bring this back to the next meeting?
Table till next meeting?
I think we all know what we want here. I know, but it would be better just to be able to bring it out and say, here's all the things that we've discussed tonight. This has been aired.
I don't have a problem with that. Yeah, I'll second table the item number 3, as they both go together. Any other discussion? I'll do a roll call vote again to table item 3 till next meeting.
Thank you, Mayor Myers. Councilmember Schwartz,
Aye.
Councilmember Fancher,
Aye.
Councilmember Madewell,
Aye.
Councilmember Skog, Deputy Mayor Martinez.
Do we have to have another lengthy discussion the next time it comes up? Or can we just start from right here? If we can start from right here and avoid a lengthy conversation, then I'm aye.
Mayor Myers.
Aye.
Motion
So
carries.
item number
6-0.
3 will be tabled until next meeting. Thank you. I think staff has some direction. to Bring back for next meeting. Thank you. Item number 4, the proposed BMX track improvements. I'll turn this over to our Parks, Rec and Cultural Services Director, Doug Coots.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Gonna share my screen here. We do have members from Moses Lake BMX here with us tonight. I'm going to give a very abbreviated version of their presentation to Park Board. Park Board unanimously recommended that council adopt these suggested design proposals for the BMX track. And I will say very clearly from point 1 here, that BMX Association, Moses Lake BMX, is going to be funding these improvements. This will not cost taxpayer dollars at all. So moving through, I'll just give you a brief overview. What they're looking at doing is putting in a registration and concessions modular office trailer, some retaining walls on the corners for additional viewing area, as well as to support those corners. Some lighting on the track, additional bleachers, a covered staging area, track drainage, and some additional parking. Now, all of this, some of this will require permits from health departments and city processes. So all we are asking tonight is for your approval of the design and the actual layout of things at the track. Nothing is set in stone at this point in time. So you can see here, this is an overview of the track. If you look down here, you'll see that's where they plan to place the registration and concessions trailer. We connect that to power in the ice arena, which is right behind it. Additionally, you see that they've got on turn 1 and turn 3, and actually as well on turn 2, they have some of the blocks there, and we'll talk about those here in a second. So corner retaining walls for the spectators and stabilize the corners. You can see here, this is kind of what they're talking about for the turn 2 wall. This will stabilize turn 2 and give an increased spectator area at the top of that. And it's also much more visually appealing than just walking up and seeing a big dirt pile. So you can see here some of the designs. This is from the Caldwell, Idaho track. They've put up some different kinds of block that this is what they'll be looking at doing. And that's 1 and 3. The secondary portion of this is lighting the track. Right now, when it gets dark, they stop. Now, this would also probably require some community meetings in that neighborhood to talk about the lighting and what the impact of that lighting would be on the neighborhood. These are all LEDs that are downward facing that are designed to light the track only, but that need to communicate with our neighbors would be very, very important. Before that went in, not afterwards. Then the staging area, covered staging area. Right now we have a temporary shade structure that they use for larger events. But this is in Caldwell that you can see it's much more permanent type solution for shade over the starting area. It gives them a more usable staging area there. This was right before their big event this past year. We had a rainstorm right before, so removing infield fence and deepening the midfield channels and then install some French drains. They were able to pump all this out the night before and get it ready for the race the next day. But having that drainage in there would be a godsend for events like this and days like this. So this would be great to have for them. That's everything. We would also be looking at putting in, I think they're going to LTAC for some funding for the large bleacher here. This year, and they already have some storage down at the bottom. All we're looking for at this time is a approval of the design. Staff and the Parks and Recreation Cultural Services Board have already reviewed this and are in agreement that this is a good proposed plan. I'll take any questions, or we do have Jeff from Moses Lake BMX if you have any questions for them.
Councilmember Swartz.
Yeah, a couple of questions. Doug, are we going to do the engineering in-house for this?
I believe most of the engineering is pretty much done. It's just basically putting up blocks around the sand that's already existing, the silt. So I don't, those are really much
And
engineering.
the lighting and all that.
The lighting and all of that, that's going to be done. That'll be worked out by BMX.
Great.
They have to do all of that. That would be their ball of wax to deal with.
And I got a couple of questions. So
Yeah, Jeff Neheke, Association President with Moses Lake BMX.
great. Thanks for coming tonight. So if there's a lighted facility, is there, how does the facility operate today as far as just the public being able to use it?
So the park's open during daylight hours. Currently, we run races on the weekends in the spring and fall, like this time of year, because we just don't have light. During the summer, we do switch and do races on Friday nights. And then throughout the year, we try to run practices at 6 o'clock during the weeknights. But with the additional lighting, we can run an extra race during the middle of the week. And the other tracks are getting larger rider counts and more participation midweek. So it really effectively doubles our racing season.
Okay, and then is your club experiencing growth?
Yeah, we've over doubled the size of the ridership in the last 3 years, and we're expecting to double it again in the next couple of years.
And so how many riders do you have today?
Currently, we have about 50 riders. Our large event draws in over 400 riders per day for our big club races. And our 5-year goal is to bring a national to Moses Lake, which draws in over 2,000 people a day.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor Martinez.
Well, I just wanted to thank you guys for how active you are and clearly for paying for this, as you've heard. My grandson used to be a BMXer, so I'm just, I'm astounded at your growth and what you bring to the city of Moses Lake with your events. So I appreciate you working on this with us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So staff is looking for some direction. If you'd like to make a motion to approve the proposed
So
plan.
moved. So moved.
Second.
I'd second it. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 5, the Grant County EHG Homeless Interlocal Agreement.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, Council. And I have to correct an error right from the get-go. It's EHF, Emergency Housing Fund. I typed it wrong. I apologize. We have so many grants. Many of them end with a G, ESG and CHG. But the purpose of this report tonight is twofold. One is to request City Council authorization on a contract with Grant County for Emergency Housing Fund money. And secondly, to just provide some background, just based on some of the conversation that occurred at the last meeting. I want to just help clarify where the money is coming from and what the money is intended to be used for. As I put as a page 121 of the packet is where I begin describing what occurred back in 2020. Just due to the COVID crisis, the federal government recognized the housing challenges that were occurring. And so they put into act the Emergency Solutions Grant COVID-19. It's called the ESGCV grant. And that's what we concluded at our last meeting, what we talked about. But the program utilized federal funds to support communities in providing street outreach, emergency shelter, rental assistance, and related services. And this was intended for folks that were either experiencing homelessness or at risk of it, to like maybe prevent that from occurring. So the purpose of the ESG program, as described by the State Department of Commerce, was to provide homelessness prevention assistance to households who'd otherwise become homeless if not for the program, essentially. And this page, I don't know why it does it, but sometimes the top of a page will get cut off. So you missed a little bit of that in your packet. Basically the funding was passed from the federal government to the states. So in the state of Washington, the Department of Commerce at the state level then allocated the funding to each of the counties, and the local jurisdictions could then apply for grant funding to operate qualifying shelter programs. So in November of 2020, City of Moses Lake successfully applied for and received $1,458,765 in these ESGCV funding dollars. So then we quickly ramped up operations. I wasn't here at the time, but I was told everyone banded together, got the shelter that we all know down on East Broadway put together, and opened up the Open Doors Sleep Center to provide the services that were described in the grant purpose statement. Over the course of the next 3 years, additional funding was made available from the state, and the city council executed 5 amendments to their contract with the county through 2023 that brought the total amount to $1,714,775. So we basically got over 300,000 more than originally intended, and that was over a 3-year period. And we went into a little bit of the operations at the last meeting, and then you heard from Hope Source at the beginning or the work session prior to this meeting. So the ESGCV grant ended September 30th, but in response to the ongoing homelessness challenges, the federal government created a new funding source called the Emergency Housing Fund, so EHF. So the state has once again allocated money to each of the counties. And for the next grant cycle, which is actually July 1st through June 20th of 2024, the county is allocating $663,000 to the city of Moses Lake because we're already providing these services. It's to help us continue providing the services at the sleep center. I did want to just show you an example. Let me pull it up here real quick of kind of how we reported over the last grant cycle. So this is a voucher sheet that I have to submit with each of our monthly bills. And we talked about the various categories at the last meeting, but you've got over here on the side, admin, HMIS, outreach, shelter case management, shelter operations, rapid rehousing case management, rapid rehousing rental assistance, rapid rehousing other financial assistance, prevention case management, prevention rent assistance, and prevention other financial assistance. So they have a guidebook that says what each of these categories is. They kind of blend together, honestly. But I'm just showing you, this is the form I had to fill out. And so per invoice for this is one I submitted just last week. It was actually for the July billing. And that's because the grant ended and we kind of were in a holding pattern for their fiscal year. So the fiscal year ended, but the grant actually went through September. And then we were asking for additional funds. It took time for this county to ask the state, et cetera. So this is what we submitted for that month. And in this, what it does is it tells you the total amount down here on the bottom, this 1.7 million, and how much you requested previous to that. This amount, 79,000, was what I submitted for that month, but it's actually calculates June and July because we'd run out of money in certain categories. So we were waiting for a permission to move them to different categories. So it took a little bit of time. So $51,000 was left after July. Okay. And then I have to submit this subrecipient checklist that the county provides and stating, if we're submitting a payment request, we have to verify that the expenditures were made for an allowable activity under the grant guidelines. I mean, it just goes down. There's this big old checklist. And then I submit an invoice and you can see that some of them were for 2 months worth of individual items. So this is our bathroom, our office that we rent, the lease that we pay, the electric bill, the city utilities, the septic bill, the laundry services, the security contract for 3 months, and the Hope Source bill. So that was that amount. And then what we do is we just attach all of the invoices to it. So I just wanted to give you just kind of a feel for what we have to do with these kinds of agreements. But going back to the actual report on page 122, page 2 of the attached contract itself describes the services to be provided as follows. In accordance with the Federal Funding Accountability and Transparency Act, the county will provide resources to assist people who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of experiencing homelessness with street outreach, shelter, case management, and rent assistance. So the county is responsible for administering the EHF contract and ensuring that the funds are used in accordance with all the program requirements. So in addition to all that stuff that I submitted, I guess I can actually really quickly show you, scroll down past it. At the conclusion of it, with the Hope Source bill, they have to turn in all their, those are all the hours of the security center. This is what's called their expanded ledger, and this details Hope Source and how they spend exactly the dollars of where all the money is going. And we have to submit all these reports plus about 4 or 5 other spreadsheets that have the HMIS data in them. And so there's a lot of backup, and this is just a piece of it. I didn't include the spreadsheets that we also have to submit to the county. And so the county, they go through auditing. Oops, wrong one here. And they just went through an audit where they had to like get all of the backup that we provided to demonstrate that we met all of the state and federal requirements for the grant. So the city of Moses Lake is a subrecipient, and the county is to provide assistance and guidance to the city in meeting the program requirements. The city then expends the funds in accordance with the grant guidelines and submits invoices to the county. So the program requirements that we are supposed to follow come from the state, and it's the Washington State Department of Commerce guidelines for the consolidated homeless grant. And there's 70 some odd pages in here. I'm just showing them to you. This goes back to, this is our actual agreement with the county that we're looking at tonight. This is what we're looking to potentially get signed into place. This goes into all the services that they provide. And what I was discussing, I'm currently the contact person at the state. This talks about the amount for $663,000 from July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024. No payment shall be made unless it's work performed that's in accordance with the guidelines. Moving forward, the new documents that I have to submit have been reduced. They're not as expansive as what I just showed you. They're only going to have a few categories. And so, let me see, I've got it on here. The allowable expenses are described in that, several, well, 70 some odd page document. And the categories are administration, operations, facility support, and rent. And that's it. And so they're categorizing, they're lumping some of those together. So admin is a typical cost. And with our contract here, that is actually going to be some admin fees we will actually pay back to the county. It'll pay for some of the city staffing, and then some admin fees that would be billed by Hope Source or whoever we're going to utilize. And so when we get to the bottom of this contract with the county, sorry, a little bit long here. We do have it broken down into categories of funding. So this is the county's contract, but the city of Moses Lake budget for $663,000. The bulk of it they had in operations, but we actually, I do actually need to modify this contract. We had a discussion with Janice just last week. We found out what can be charged to facility support and operations. So I will, if you guys approve this tonight, I'm going to ask that you allow us to modify the contract budget. Facility support would be all the items we're paying for, like lease and all the rentals at the facility. So, and I apologize, I didn't realize we hadn't updated that page right there. So entering into the contract with the Grant County would allow the city to continue operating the Open Door Sleep Center utilizing grant funding And it would allow us to continue to enforce the no camping policy in the public property, city parks, rights of way, any other publicly owned areas. Now, separately, you had asked us to go and do an RFP to look for a new provider. At the next meeting, what we can do is we can put together, we've already got an agreement in place. It wasn't quite ready for this meeting to operate on a monthly basis with Hope Source until we went down that path. But I did want to just ensure that that was still the direction you wanted to go, was to look at who else might be able to provide it. But I think at the last meeting, a suggestion was made of just utilizing a security company. But I was showing you all these grant guidelines to let you know that it would be rather difficult for a security company to do that specific type of work and meet all those grant guidelines and fill out all the paperwork about HMIS data. So do you have any questions for me at this point?
Councilmember Schwartz.
Yeah, quick question. So earlier tonight, we heard that Hope Source has 115 grants that they use to operate. Who secures those?
Who secures them?
Yes.
On their behalf, I can't really speak on their behalf, but what I do know is that they operate in more than one county and more than one program. So in our county, the funding we're a subrecipient from the county, and then we are then passing it on to Hope Source. In Kittitas County, the state contracts directly with Hope Source because Kittitas County they've never created a program. So in different counties, it's different programs. And then she pointed out earlier, they're doing more than homelessness. They do work with children and youth and veterans, and I can't even speak to them, but that larger amount she had cited to you was for all of the programs across
Right, and
regions.
that's, I think, where it gets confusing, because we're funding it differently than the program she was talking about tonight. You're telling me, which we discovered later, really don't exist here. They exist in Kittitas County because this funding is different. Is that the idea? So what my question is do we spend staff time to go out and secure these grants independent of Hope Source?
So honestly, the grant this time around, the state just said, hey, here's your share. We didn't have to do.
County.
The county contacted me and said, we got money from the federal government, well, from the state and from the federal government. City of Moses Lake, this is your share, because they recognize that the homelessness challenge is not going away. And so this federal government is trying to just find a way to continue the program. But I'm just speaking to what I know for our community.
No, that was a great explanation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Councilmember Scogg.
Is that the $600,000 from the county?
Yeah, well, it's not showing more, but we're getting, the county is offering up $663,000 to the city of Moses Lake to continue operating the sleep center as long as we meet the program guidelines from the state.
And all that's going to do is just the sleep center. That's none of the other programs or assistance programs or housing or anything.
Yeah, so the other programs that they operate, there's different grants for those. And I believe Hope Source was able to contract directly with the state moving forward, and she's here on the enhanced shelters. Because we don't own it
We're
anymore.
maybe talking about just taking the sleep center out, or that's a separate entity funded all by itself.
Yeah, this money here is specifically for the sleep center. The 663,000.
So if we did this, are we taking that money and having a contract with Hope Source?
Yeah, the idea would be to give them a portion. We would retain back the amount we need to pay on the ground lease and all the rentals that we've got and the utilities and et cetera.
Staff is looking for some direction. If you'd like to make a motion.
I move to authorize the interim city manager to execute the contract with Grant County for acceptance of the Washington State Department of Commerce Emergency Housing Fund grant so that we can keep the Open Door Sleep Center open so that we don't have people camping in the parks.
Did you need that portion to be able to amend?
No, that was just my,
And yeah, sure. Yes, thank you, Don. With the amendment to the budget to include facility support.
You included that. Okay. Any other discussion? We have a second. Do we have a second?
I have one more question.
Second.
We have a second. He does have another question. Go ahead.
To accept that money does not necessarily mean that is a contract with Hope Source.
No, this is a contract with the county only, and then we will come back to you with a different
And what we
contract
do with
or RFP, but we'll come back with a month-to-month contract because to keep it open
Okay.
and then go out for
Okay.
an RFP.
Councilmember Schwartz.
Yeah, just one quick question. Sorry. So what is, you listed those, the various
Categories?
components of the budget, right? So,
Yes.
and then you said we needed to add down at the bottom, like the lease and all of that stuff. I'm assuming that comes out of our general fund, right?
No, no money has ever come out of the general fund for
Ever.
the sleep center. No.
Okay, so that amount, whatever that ends up being, we'll get that much more money?
No.
No.
It'll come out of that.
Let me.
Oh, okay.
I just need to reallocate it. They'd only put money in admin and operations. We just need to move some operations into facility support.
Just make it look good. Okay.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to the administrative reports.
Thank you, Mayor. We have two tonight. We'll start with Doug and then we'll go to Richard.
Good evening. And I just wanted to let everyone know, the council and mayor, deputy mayor, we have completed as parks the xeriscaping demonstration project on Pioneer Way in front of Enzo. We have had our crew out there to do the work, took out the grass, removed some of the components of the spray irrigation and changed it over to drip irrigation, put in xeriscaping. And that is there. I would encourage all of you to take a walk by there and take a look at it. Thank you.
Councilmember Skog has a question or comment.
Doug, did you have a approximate square foot cost of what it takes to do?
So looking at staff time, resources, plants that we bought, the rock that we bought, the fabric and everything, the total that we spent came to $10,000. We added in for calculating out going forward, another 1,600 in trees because there were existing mature trees on the planter strip that we did not remove.
Okay.
So $11,600 in total expenditure, 3,200 square feet came to $3.63 a square foot.
Is that a number that you could advise somebody in the, a developer or somebody, or, wanting to do something and say, these projects in that kind of scaping could.
That's something that we're looking at for those planter strips that already have the irrigation lines in them. If we had to add irrigation in for drip irrigation lines, it would be probably a considerable more expense to connect to water. What we're looking at this as a demonstration for is more for our use in looking at planter strips and medians throughout the city. So taking a look at how that looks is more important right now. And if that is something that is acceptable to council, we could start looking at using some leftover of the ARPA funds next year when all the other uses have been exhausted to maybe plan out a plan of attack for using the rest of that towards this kind of a method of water mitigation.
Will you be applying maybe that new look to code requirements for landscaping and?
That is something that we are talking about with even with the park design that we brought to the council last meeting. We are looking at designs that do limit water uses and limit the application of just grass as a method of giving you a park. Here's a bunch of grass, open space, enjoy your park. We are looking at more designs that employ some hardscape, some barriers to the streets so that you're not having heat issues on maintaining grass right beside a hot asphalt roadway in the middle of summer. All of those things are being considered in our code design and development review, working with Kirsten's department. We are looking at all of those as park and as a landscaping design as well.
It looks good, by the way.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Martinez.
will you be able to track what the cost savings is as far as water usage?
On that small piece of property, probably not. The island there is too small to really make a huge difference. But if you consider the fact that we are now drip irrigating versus spray irrigating, we're going to be saving significantly on water. We now no longer have to mow that strip of grass at least weekly. So you're looking at saving man hours, water hours. It's going to be a savings in the long run. Is it maintenance free? It is not maintenance free. Nothing in this world is. We will have to go out and probably rake those stones, maybe replenish the stones a little bit here and there. We'll probably have some plant work we have to do and some weeding, even though we put weed fabric down. It's not maintenance free. It is much less maintenance than the grass that was there.
Thank you. I
Yep.
do want to say, when that project was being done, I would leave for work at 5:30 and I have to drive down there every time. So I was surprised to see our city staff, our workers working that early in the morning. But it made sense that they didn't want to impact the traffic. So I appreciate those who drug themselves out of bed early to get that done.
So I will just comment that the crew that worked on that of their own impotent decision decided themselves to come in early on the Tuesday to get the rock put in, because number one, they didn't want to inconvenience the public, and number two, they didn't want to be standing out in the middle of traffic trying to get stones put into that area. So they took that upon themselves. I applaud them for it. And I literally went over that day to the parks maintenance garage to talk to them all and have a coffee in the morning with them, as I sometimes do. And they came back when I got there at about 7:30 and had finished. So it was 2.5 days to do 3,200 square feet of that property, it was a great project. It was great to see it done. And I think we've got a good kind of template for moving that forward if we so choose.
Councilmember Fancher.
I should be able to, Councilman Scog, I should be able to give you those numbers from the private side here. Hopefully next year, we're yanking all ours out. I've got the choice of designs coming shortly. And I'm guarantee it's going to be an upfront cost, but maintenance and a water bill. It's an old irrigation system. I'm pretty sure we spent a lot of money on water this year.
All right, next item.
So we've been having lots of conversations, trying to get things moving forward. So I had conversations this week with Department of Health and the EPA about well 20. And so it looks like we have proposed a window of the last 2 weeks of this month to do our long duration well pumping test at well 20. And then after that, we will submit all of the source approval paperwork to the Department of Health for final review. Anticipating we'll have approval to turn on well 20 sometime during the winter, so that it's ready for use in the spring. We've also been moving forward with the Bureau of Reclamation. We turned in an application for 5,000 acre feet of water. We won't have to pay for the water until we actually start taking it from them. In the meantime, we're going to be working on the environmental and other things to get that permit in place. Understanding that between now and when we can take the water, we're going to have to build a treatment plant. We're going to have to build distribution mechanisms to share the water through town. So there'll be some significant capital projects in the tens of millions of dollars in order to accomplish utilizing that water. 5,000 acre feet is approximately half of what we deliver on an annual basis in the city of Moses Lake currently. It would, as far as in gallons per minute, it would, the 10 CFS rate that the Bureau was saying we could probably get at the location we're proposing, would be replace about 5 wells if we could do that. So it'd be a significant help. It wouldn't solve all of our problems, but it would significantly help where we're at today. We're also continuing to move forward with our ASR grant funding from the Department of Ecology, Office of the Columbia River, which aquifer storage and recharge. So investigating as we're looking at some of these other sources, would it make sense to find some locations where we might be able to pump that treated water back into the aquifer on the shoulder months, let's say when water is available in the canal, but we don't have huge demand yet on our system from irrigation, those types of things. So we're continuing to investigate that. We've got pilot tests going currently for well 34. We're also we've also contracted with Gray and Osborne to do some pilot testing on treatment options for canal water and lake water to see if those options ever come to if and when we can ever get that legal access to those water, what kind of treatment facilities to try to get some planning in place to estimate costs. The other thing we're moving forward with is trying to utilize the direct appropriation from our state government for the Larson Ballfield water replacement. So currently the plan and what we're proposing is, instead of trying to go all the way to the lake to get water, is to utilize it would take about 40 acre feet annually to utilize a small portion of our shallow water rights, or shallow aquifer water rights, to just drill a shallow well on the property and serve it locally. There would cost significantly less, probably on the order of $150,000 to $200,000 ish. More, well, our appropriation is $250,000, and we think we could do that plus modify controls and for that price versus it would take probably, our estimate was closer to $1 million to get all the way to the lake to try to take it out. So we would be able to fund it solely with that direct appropriation and do it in 1 year instead of having to do it over multiple years. So those are the things that I've been working on here in the last week. So any questions?
Just a quick update for the council on the legislative process. I've been working with the Department of Commerce, which is administering that allocation. They have a real short, about 1.5 page document that the city filled out to apply for what they call a change of scope, which would allow us to make that project transition from the laying of pipe to the shallow well that Richard described. So Commerce has received that document. It has to be approved by legislative staff in both houses. We've received that approval from the House. It's in the hands of the staff in the Senate. Right now, we have not been given any indication that they are opposed to it. So just working through the process, but we are hoping for good news on that request. And as Richard said, it would greatly speed up the completion of that project. And though going in a slightly different manner, that was the way the request was presented, was that it accomplishes the same ultimate goal, which is getting that facility off the deepwater aquifer.
And just one more piece of water information, because as I have said multiple times, we have water conversations every single day. After sitting in at the grand opening on Friday of, sorry, not grand opening, the groundbreaking at Samaritan, talked to Teresa Sullivan afterwards. They received a significant low interest loan from the U.S. Department of Ag. I reached out to USDA today to inquire about a low interest loan for the city to build the treatment facility, lines, and the storage. And I have an advocate from USDA in Wenatchee that is going to work tirelessly to try to get us some resolution or hopefully some funding that we could get So just, we are again, working to try to resolve the problem and come up with the funding to help do it. So.
Councilmember Madewell.
I have a question for Richard. On the Larson Field, did you by chance look at the well there at Peninsula School to see if we could irrigate from there? Or, sorry.
So currently the well, we have a deep water, we have a deep aquifer well there. And in the same well house is a shallow well that is operated by the school district. The capacity of that well currently, the pumps and things that are in it and the size of the well would be stretching the capacity of that little well. And the other issue that is the water right situation. Whose water right is feeding what, and how do we guarantee that we're not spreading water, in the words of the state? So it would be, in my opinion, it would be much cleaner to not try to muddy those legal waters and have two people trying to use the same hole with different water rights. Does that make sense?
Okay, I think that's it. Good for administrative reports?
Mayor, that is it.
Okay. Council committee reports. We'll start with Councilmember Schwartz.
I have nothing other than there's a Mario Kart tournament coming up, I heard through the Parks and Rec Department, so I will be participating in that. So if anybody would like to play Mario Kart against me, you're all welcome. Thanks. The video game. I'll be in the comfort of my living room, I think is how that works.
As long as we're not running on Rainbow Road, I might take you up on that.
Councilmember Madewell.
I don't have anything, thank you.
Councilmember Fancher.
Nothing till next meeting.
Councilmember Scogg.
Looking at the finance committee meeting, budgets are going to be tight, and there will be some interesting conversations coming up about what we spend money on. It's a little bit unnerving when we think about where we need to go and how we're going to get there. But there'll be some tough decisions to make.
Deputy Mayor Martinez.
Ditto. On the finance committee. I don't have anything else to add.
And I have nothing to add. Our next regular council meeting is October 24th at 6:30. We will now be going into an executive session for 30 minutes to discuss performance of a public employee pursuant to RCW 42.30.110 parentheses 1 subsection G. The meeting will adjourn following the session 9:12. No action to follow. Thank you.